Three women vanished from a house in the middle of the night. Their cars were still in the driveway. Their purses were still inside. The porch light's glass lay shattered on the steps. No forced entry, no calls for help. By sunrise, the place was too quiet. The night before had been ordinary. Two friends, worn out from graduation parties, decided not to drive across town. They went back with the mother of one of them and planned to sleep there. They carried their bags inside and left their cars in the drive. The mother had come home from a long shift and was ready for bed. A small dog padded through the living room and settled. There was no tension, no raised voices, nothing that pointed to trouble. Sometime between midnight and dawn, the script changed. Beds held the shallow crease of someone lying down and then getting up again. Cigarettes, rings, and wallets stayed in the purses. Keys sat in a dish by the door. The cars never moved. Nothing suggested anyone walked away by choice. The only disruption was outside, where the porch light had been knocked loose, glass scattered across the steps as if brushed aside. Late the next morning, friends came by. They knocked and called through the door. When no one answered, they stepped inside. The purses were lined up in plain view. A coffee cup on the counter had a ring drying at the bottom. The dog barked and crawled under a chair. On the answering machine, a strange, low message played, garbled and unsettling, and in the confusion, someone erased it. The glass on the steps looked messy, so a broom pushed it aside. In trying to help, they disturbed what little the night had left. Patrol officers arrived and found the same picture. 3 people gone, no forced door, no ransacked rooms, no note. At first, they hoped for simple explanations, an errand, a ride with a friend, but the hours stacked up with no calls, no withdrawals, no sightings. By nightfall, detectives were treating the home as a crime scene. They canvassed the block with questions. A neighbor remembered an older van near the house, the driver sitting low and watching. Another thought she heard a muffled cry after 2, then nothing. A clerk said 3 women stopped in just before dawn, but the register tape didn't settle it. A truck driver swore he saw them at a stoplight miles away. Leads were logged, chased, and crossed out. There were no cameras on the corners to save the day, no footage to pull, no trail out of the neighborhood. The search widened fast. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through fields and ditches. Deputies dragged ponds and checked culverts. Helicopters skimmed tree lines and river bends, hunting for the flash of chrome from a car off the road. Flyers went up on gas pumps, grocery doors, and poles across 3 counties. Families set up a base at a church, took shifts on the phones, and sorted tips into stacks that grew by the hour. Someone offered a reward. People who had never met the women stayed out until midnight, then came back the next morning. The first week ran on adrenaline and fear. Friends split the city into quadrants and cleared them. Farmers opened gates and let lines of searchers cross. A salvage yard was sifted car by car. Bridges and boat ramps were checked at night. When the week ended with nothing to show, reality set in. The search didn't stop, but the pace changed. Months slid by and habits hardened into rituals. Reporters returned on anniversaries and asked the same questions. The mother's chair at the salon sat empty. Co-workers left it that way. Bedrooms at home stayed as they were, clothes hanging, posters tacked, a note on a mirror that no one wiped away. Fathers and brothers drove loops after dark, scanning gravel shoulders for skids and fresh turnouts. Rumors filled the gaps evidence would not. Some said the culprit had to be a drifter, gone by morning. Others were sure it was someone local, trusted enough to be let in without hesitation. Detectives tested both. A man in prison bragged that he knew what happened, then refused to give a detail that could be checked. Years later, workers at a construction site whispered about a concrete slab poured late at night, suggesting the women were buried beneath it. Ground-penetrating radar showed odd shapes, but engineers explained them away. The rumor stayed anyway. Investigators kept circling the same set of facts. 3 women gone without their cars or purses, a broken light on the steps, a message erased. Friends had cleaned before police understood what they were looking at. There were no signs of a fight, no broken frames, no blood. Every new detective tried to push beyond that fence. Boxes of reports were digitized. Names were run again. Old interviews replayed. A scrap of carpet tested with modern tools. Unidentified remains checked and ruled out. Through it all, the families kept their own lists. Birthdays that would have been. Holidays with a chair left open. A phone number kept active year after year. A porch light turned on at dusk. Some promises were private, some public. They said the names often because forgetting felt worse than not knowing. Theories were easy to tell and impossible to prove. One picture, a stranger at the door with a weapon low and a voice that left no room for argument. A fast walk down the steps, the light breaking in the rush. Another, a familiar face asking for a minute on the porch, a look at something outside, trust opening the door to control. The first idea explains speed, the second explains silence. Both explain cars left behind and purses on the table. Time changed the neighborhood, but the case stayed where it was. New owners painted trim and planted flowers under the steps. The story stayed with the address anyway. People driving by slowed and looked. Teachers used it as a warning about doors and visitors. Teenagers dared each other to walk up and touch the railing after dark. The house kept losing and gaining tenants. The file in the records room did not move. Detectives retired and others took their place. A cold case unit pulled the boxes again and built a new timeline with what little could be pinned to the minute. They checked known offenders in town that summer, then widened the circle. A few names rose and fell. Some talked, some lawyered up, some had alibis that held after all these years. Nothing crossed from suspicion to proof. Decades on, the outline has not shifted. 3 people went to bed and vanished before dawn. Their cars stayed where they parked them. Their purses stayed where they left them. A small dog was found inside. A porch light was broken. A message was erased. Friends swept away glass that might have carried a print. The rest is missing by inches. Whatever happened in those minutes between the door and the steps, the quiet move to a waiting vehicle, a ride that did not bring them back. There is likely someone who knows every detail of that night. The words at the door, the order in which each person stepped outside, the sound the light made when it hit the concrete, the road chosen to leave without being seen. Maybe that person is gone. Maybe they are alive and told the story to someone who has not slept well since. The town has learned to live with not knowing, but it has not agreed to stop asking. If you stand on the sidewalk in the early hours, the block sounds the same as it did then. Sprinklers ticking, a car turning the corner, a dog collar jingling. The distance from the door to the street is not far. It can be crossed in a few seconds by 3 people together or by 1 leading and 2 following. In daylight, the space looks harmless. At night, it feels longer. What remains are the habits and the promises. Lights click on at dusk. Flyers are kept in a box. Families hold on to the idea that truth can be quiet for a long time and then arrive all at once. Until it does, the case sits where it has for years. 3 lives interrupted and a gap that has not closed. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.